Hello, everybody. My name's Milan Starsik. Welcome to Freedom Rising, a podcast dedicated to empowering individuals on the journey to personal growth, lasting serenity, and freedom from addiction. Tune in and join the movement. Your journey to freedom starts here. You know you are welcome. Anytime. Hey, everybody.
Hey, everybody.
Anytime. Welcome to the 10th Recovery Freedom Rising podcast. We're here to grow in our journey together. I'm Milan Starsik, and my co-host today is Shannon. We're two souls on the path of recovery with a desire to expand our lives and experiences and share them with you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, Shannon?
Sure. Hi, Milan. Thanks so much for having me on today. I'm Shannon. I'm a grateful member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I have been in the program since 2015. It's the first time that I stepped foot into a 12-step meeting. Actually, I think it was the year before that, but it took me a little bit, drag my feet a little bit, right? Yeah, so I had just short of 7 years in this program, and I fell victim to some things that a lot of people that have experienced relapse do, right? And that's taking my will back. So I returned to addiction, and by the grace of God, I was back in the program October of last year. So I just took my 1 year. I live in Calgary, Alberta, and I'm just so grateful for the life that I have today.
Well, I'm really grateful you're here today, and I'm grateful you're back inside the program.
Thank you.
For anybody out there, I met Shannon in treatment about just under 14 months ago. We quickly became good friends in the program. I consider, Shannon one of my best female friends inside the program. And I also just love to philosophize and speak with Shannon because I find her highly intelligent and I find it very fun for us to talk about the program because I feel like we both have recovery fever. You know,
We sure do. We sure
yeah, and
do.
I think it's great for people to see happy recovery fever, not like forced sobriety. Like the whole point of this podcast is about our freedom rising inside of us.
Absolutely. And ultimately, I say God, some say higher power, right? Creator, whatever it is that you believe in. But like God chose to give me another chance, right? But I ultimately am the one that chooses my recovery every day. So everything I'm saying, it's genuine, right? You and I live this. It's not just a theory. And yeah, meeting you was life changing for me. Sometimes you just see something in somebody else that just fires you up. And I love our conversations. I love the support we've been able to give each other, and to have such a beautiful platonic friendship and recovery is just such a gift. So thank you so much for coming in my life and continuing to be in it.
I love and appreciate you, Shannon. So, what was the pivotal moment when the program sparked a recovery fire in your heart? I ask everybody this question, and the reason I do is I feel that, those quintessential moments are just something for a newcomer to maybe look forward to or keep their eyes open for.
Yeah, thanks for asking me that. I can remember the moment clearly. So first I'll give a little background. Like, AA and getting sober was like never on my to-do list. Like I also didn't realize the extent of my alcoholism. Like I knew that I tend to drink a bit more than my friends, and I knew that my consequences did not mirror that of my friends when they drank. I also knew once I started, there was no way to predict when I'd stop, even though I had that sick obsession thinking that someday I'd be able to control it. But when I hit that, you know, incomprehensible emotional bottom where I knew like I can't go on drinking like I am and I can't imagine a life without it, right? I knew somebody who had been in recovery. I'd seen, I'd been in the rooms and I saw this program working and others, but it was really when I went to treatment and completely surrendered. I walked in, I said, I'm willing to do anything that you guys tell me to do, right? I know what the alternative looks like. I can go back to that life, but I don't want to have to. And there was this beautiful sunny day, and I was out with one of my counselors at the time, and like we were riding on our motorcycle, and like the wind was just blowing. And for the first time, I felt true peace. Like, there was no fear, and mind you, I'd walked away from everything at that point. I had no idea what things my life would look like when I left recovery or when I left treatment, what it would look like in recovery. But in that moment, it was like I felt God protecting me. You know, I felt such peace, I felt such freedom, and I thought, you know what, I can do this.
Would you call that piece serenity?
100%. Yeah,
And when,
absolutely.
how many years ago was this?
2015,
Okay.
May. So
Yep.
I went in May 2015 in my first treatment center. So I'd say that was probably like early June when that moment happened. But yeah, it was like a wash over of honestly fear removed and gratitude. And I thought I was grateful for the life I had before, you know, because I had things, right? And I still had my family and stuff, but I didn't have any true gratitude for like the day-to-day blessings. So that was a real pivotal moment for me. You know, another aha moment for me in my recovery was I walked Lake Moraine out in Lake Louise with my aunt and my mom. And at that time I had lived in Calgary probably I don't know, I wanna say, like well, that was 2015, I moved in 2006, can't do the math quick, but quite a while, right? And I'd been out to Canmore, I'd been out to Banff, Lake Louise, but I'd never truly been present. So, just walking around and seeing that nature, it was like seeing where I lived for the first time. Like, it was unbelievable because I'd never, you know, not been in a complete oblivion when I'd been there. So, really, like, seeing the beauty of, like, nature and having that bond with them, like, it was unbelievable. It still kinda makes me laugh because it's like, you never saw the mountains before, you've never seen a lake before. I never saw it in its beauty like that because I was never truly there.
You were too numb to perceive almost.
Yeah, and just, you know, not in an altered state, right? Like I didn't go there because I wanted to see the beauty. I went there to party, you know, and to return to those places in sobriety has just been such a gift because my perspective has changed so abundantly.
I sometimes call being in recovery like filterless Milan. You know, there's nothing filtering my view, and there's nothing filtering my actions from you.
I love that. I
Yeah,
live a filter-free life in a lot of ways, you know?
yeah,
It's on social
absolutely.
media, but in everyday life, yeah, it's like that haze has been lifted.
And inside recovery, what have been your largest personal struggles, and how have you used the program to assist you in coping with them?
Sure. So, this time around when I went into treatment and then again committed my life to recovery. I had truly lost something that I never thought I would get as bad to lose, right? Like I put a lot of value on my career, um, on my finances, right? On how things appeared on the outside. And all that was stripped from me this time, right? Like I was starting from ground zero. And that security and that being gone, right? Like, that put me through a lot of fear, and also this time, I was far more honest about my journey and about my disease at the end of the day, right? With people I may not have been in the past. So, really having to own that and advocate for myself too, and understand that, like, those shields and those masks that I had were gone now. Like, it's me in surrender, and I have to trust and rely on God that whatever comes my way is what I'm supposed to have rather than maybe what I think I want.
So, would you say that you used self acceptance as your tool from the program in that
Yeah,
part of
and
your journey?
becoming meeting my authentic self, right? Like, you know, I was 42 this time in treatment, which is a lot different than when I was younger, right? And I didn't truly know myself. Like, I had no boundaries. I you know, was very scared in a lot of ways, you know. I was very critical of myself. My self-esteem certainly wasn't there, my self-worth. Though, you know, I speak confidently and when people meet me, they may not think that. Meanwhile, inside and in my head and in my heart, I'm dying, right? So this time to be able to match the internal with the external and there be no mask and like no filter there, for me, I'm just real and 100% raw in every aspect that I show up in my life. That's been the most freeing. It's been scary though too.
Absolutely, it's scary, and um, it's also scary coming to learn that you are enough. You know, it's It's something I think we fight from our tiniest tiny, right? Like everything about society says we're not enough. We need this. We need to be like this. We need to have that. We need to be wearing that. We need to say this to be cool, instead of actually just having honesty and transparency in who we are. And, they say that this program is really, changing everything. And I really think it is.
I didn't realize until this past year in the work that I've done, both in and outside of the rooms. And for those of you listen that don't know what I mean, I'm talking about therapy and mental health work and other tools I use alongside the steps. Uh, I never really could understand if someone said like they loved me or they loved this about me, I related it to something I've done for them, right? Like I put my value in that. And it took me a while to understand that like I don't have to do everything for everyone for them to want to be around me or for them to value me, right? And by doing that, I was losing a part of me, right? Like, yeah, some of it was genuine, but other of it was doing that because I felt like I needed to earn people's love.
And by you mean people pleasing by that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I never thought of myself like that, like as a people pleaser, but ultimately that's what it was, right? I was scared to
Hmm.
stand up for myself. I was scared to have boundaries. I didn't understand what those things meant anyways. And a lot of it was tied to trauma and stuff, but also it was if I can't love me for the way that I am today,
Hmm.
then why would I think that somebody else could, right? But now that I can and I know that I'm enough as I am today, I see that I've also attracted more genuine friendships and things have changed, right? The people in my life have changed a little bit other than, my family and like my core group. God has brought healthier people to me that just want to know me for me, not for what I can do for them or what I do for a living or how I look or where I live. None of that really matters. And I held on so much to that facade.
Would you say that most of those people that you're having those new experiences with are inside the program or not?
Yeah, a lot of them are for sure, right? I have a friendship that someone that I met last May, really, really dear female friend of mine now. And that friendship taught me a lot, right? Like just the way that she loved me unconditionally and showed up for me. And she's not one of us, right? But she understands the disease and having that support too of somebody who gets it without having truly been in it themselves, as in being an alcoholic or an addict, having that real support and somebody also push me outside of my fear. Like I tend to isolate, I tend to want to be alone a lot, right? And having this person ask me just to go do day-to-day things and want to hang out with me and want to spend time with me, that made me realize that I truly need people, as did the fellowship, right? And that's what I did differently this time is like I don't just, go to the meeting, say hi to the group that I'm comfortable with. Go talk to newcomers a lot. I'll talk to people that I haven't seen before and, I reach out. That's the biggest thing is I reach out all the time when I'm struggling. I don't try to fix it myself. And I don't have shame or embarrassment that I need help. That kept me sick for a long time.
That's a big thing, admitting that vulnerability and also that need for love and assistance.
We're
Absolutely.
not meant to be alone, right? And I thought that it was a character strength to be able to be a one-man army,
I
and
got this on my own. Yeah,
I
yeah,
got this. People
yeah,
need you can reach out to me and I won't judge you for being weak, but I need to fix me. I got it, right?
yeah,
And it's like I can't call on my higher power once a year when shit hits the fan, forgive me for swearing,
yeah.
and expect that we're gonna have a healthy relationship. I can't
Mm.
only reach out to my friends in good times, right? And expect that I'm going to have a two-sided friendship. They want to know me, they want to help me, and there's no judgment there. And for me, that was just very mind-blowing.
It's hard to be vulnerable and to expose that vulnerability. I'm learning it myself right now, and that'll be a bit of a lifelong journey.
Yeah,
I
and that's
I
the best thing is like we don't have to get this all today, right? It's
yeah.
just we'll keep work in progress.
it's giving that grace though for the time that it takes, for that healing to occur. It's one of the biggest struggles is that acceptance of where you're at now, you know, so that
Yeah.
it doesn't drag you into comparing the past or wishing for the future and keeping you in that present moment.
Yeah, and also, like, I remember, walking in options and seeing you and just how bubbly and excited you were and welcoming to me and everything. And, I probably wanted to go in and control the situation a little bit, like talk when I felt ready. And you just were right there and pushed me out of my comfort zone immediately. And I knew right then, like, I'm going to need these people. And not just I'm going to need them, I want to need these people. I want to be on this journey. I need this fellowship.
Absolutely. We were a great little community
We
in
sure
there.
were.
Yeah, it's some of my fondest memories really of my entire life happened inside that 35 days. Okay, so the topic you chose today was sponsorship and the power of carrying the message. Could you
Mhm.
explain what this means to you and why you chose it for today?
Sure. So, sponsorship and, helping newcomers being able to carry the message in the rooms and also to live a principled life, right, is of absolute necessity to me. Like it tells us in our literature, um, that to ensure over and relapse is continuous work with another alcoholic, right? And I know that to be true because I didn't get the time that I had in the program before because I wasn't sponsoring. I was. Also, there's so much love in that, right? It's being able to freely give back what has been given. Give back what has been so freely given to me and genuinely help somebody, right? Without an expectation or without seeking reward. And to see the lights go on for somebody who's been in such despair, there really is no greater feeling than that. And even when I'm tired, right? I'll drive, I'll meet a sponsee, I'll do some step work, and I leave like just on fire. I'm awake, I'm recharged, I'm revived. And, if I didn't have the sponsor that I have, right? This journey would look a heck of a lot different. Like it tells us, it's one alcoholic with another that really works, and I've experienced that today. So, being able to give back, like, I can never repay what this program has given me. So, this is the least that I can do to stay living in the solution and to have that emotional sobriety.
They say that a person who sponsors themselves has a fool for their sponsor and a fool for their sponsee. And, when I came out of options, it took me a few weeks to connect with the person that I wanted to have as my sponsor. But then after, kind of a couple months, it wasn't the right environment that he wanted to share with us in. And it wasn't that his necessarily the sponsoring there was anything wrong with that. It's just that he wanted to meet only in a Starbucks in a really public place, and it was too loud and too crazy for my brain to really experience education in. And so for 2 months until I met up with my now sponsor, I was, kind of just going at it by myself. And, to anybody that's new or anybody out there, I read things and I absorb things like Milan's brain will perceive it. And that's part of being me. I'm the culmination of my life experiences, and I absorb information the way I've learned to decipher it. But somebody else taking you through the book and taking you through the steps is going to show you a perspective from somebody who is literally proof in the pudding that the program's working right now. They're further ahead than you, and they've managed to have some sort of amount of sobriety that, ultimately our thinking didn't get us.
Well, they have a message, right, of both depth and weight, meaning that they can relate to what we've gone through, right? And our stories may not be the same, but the patterns are, right? The feelings, the emotions, everything that's tied to addiction is the same ultimately. And they found a solution that works. Like they're no longer living in that life. That's enough for me, right? I see
Yeah.
that, I'm attracted to people that are don't just say things, they back it up by the way they're living,
Hmm.
right? And when I see a woman who is happy, joyous, free, so grateful, saying things that I never imagined I'd say, which I do now today, is that they're grateful to be, an addict because they have this design for living. That's something they have something I want, right? So who am I to challenge that, right? It's
Mm.
worked all of these years for a reason, and it's going to continue to, whether, I choose to participate or not.
Yeah, I feel that I didn't get sober to be stagnant. I didn't get sober to be grumpy forever. I didn't get sober to be sad. And, Milan used to be 0 or 11 in addiction. I was off, or I was like 11 or shooting for 14 and riding on 11. And now I take great joy and being like a serene 6 or 7 in my life. And, without having these tools, I never would have learned about the joy inside that serenity.
Well, you and
And
I have had conversations too, right? About what addiction looked like for us and what our life looked like at that time. And, you and I are people that are all gas, no brakes, like we're either going to the wheels come off or we're not at all, right? So if I throw all of me into my addiction, I had to throw all of me into my recovery too, right? Because I need something that's going to replace that is bigger and better. And for me, that's the freedom that I have today, no longer having to be an addiction. So, yeah, I got to hit this with everything that I have. But really, it comes down to just doing the simple day to day things that take care of Shannon, right? I can't pour from an empty cup and I can't give what I don't have myself. So, keeping that connection with my higher power, asking for help, praying, meditating, truly, living my life one day at a time, sometimes, half a day at a time, right? When things get overwhelming, but that there's just so much freedom in that, knowing that like I don't have to have all the answers. I have other people I can lean on. I got a sponsor I can bounce things off of, right? And ultimately, I've already made the biggest decision, and that's to choose my life. So I just have to keep choosing that every day.
that's perfectly put, Shannon. Do you have a question you'd like to ask me?
I do. So I remember, we were talking, maybe it was a few months outside of options, and you had thought that perhaps you needed to, have a year or something before you started sponsoring, which is, opinion that's thrown around in the room sometimes. Can you tell me what your recovery looks like today now that you're working with other addicts and sponsoring yourself? Have you seen a drastic change in more like I'll say like the leveled upness of your recovery since you've been able to give back in that sense?
So, when we spoke about that, that was something that I had heard inside options. Um, I didn't necessarily hear that in the rooms, like
Okay.
per se, but it was like kind of something they threw into us in options, or somebody said
Hmm.
it. It's kind
It's
of one of
quite
those
common.
things.
We hear it. I hear it,
And then when I met my current sponsor, he had started sponsoring someone 2.5 months into his program, and you almost quoted this perfectly earlier, but practical experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive works with other alcoholics. He wanted the most immunity. It wasn't even a desire to help others. He just wanted to be straight so bad. He said, well, if that's what it takes, I have to go help somebody. And he started sponsoring someone 2.5 months into it, because what another part of the literature, which I should have had that quote as well, is that it's okay to start sponsoring once you've had a spiritual experience. And I know for a fact that, there's been kind of three pivotal points of that for myself inside the program, where I've had some very large changes in my experiencing of the entire world due to working the steps themselves. And so when I met my sponsor, we'll call him John because that's his name. but but anyway, I'm not saying his last name, and he wouldn't care anyway. He's going to be on here on Wednesday. But
Mhm.
but anyway, when I met him and he spoke of that, at that time, I had a friend who was relapsing and, but didn't want to go back to a room. And so, I offered, I said, well, okay, don't go to meetings, don't do anything else, but you definitely need some step work here, man. Like you're not having a good time. And so there came a point where he finally reached out to me and asked me if that offer was still available. And so then we began to roll on that. And you know, one of the things that I think is the most important about that quote that I read there is that the reason we need to help others is not only for that circle of energy inside this program, but it's because as addicts, we are basically almost the most selfish, self serving um, example of humanity that there is inside that addiction. And when you actually are doing service for service sake, and fully, like you can't kind of help somebody, you can't kind of pay attention to somebody, you actually have to do it. Okay, like I'm not, and I'm saying that because I've seen, some distracted actions inside the program where I'm like, obviously that's not going to, make someone feel like you're giving them their attention. But when you actually sit there and read the book with someone and go over their step work with someone and give them your present moment, you're not there thinking about your addiction. That's not possible. Like, you can't seriously have two thoughts at once. People can multitask, but you can actually only have one present thought at a time. And if that thought is at that moment helping that person, then that means that you're not there thinking about your addiction.
That's so beautifully said. And it's true, right? I like how you touched on that, selfish, self-centered, self-seeking to our absolute core, right? Which,
Mm.
of course, we don't want to believe or see, right? When we first come in, but when everything's stripped away, it's painfully obvious, right? And in when I'm working with a sponsee or I'm speaking with another member of the program, I'm fully dialed in. I'm out of me. And there's not a
Exactly.
lot of times during the day where I'm not thinking about me ultimately, right? And that's just so beautiful because I need more moments like that. I need to be is so far away from my diseased brain as possible and being able to be present and give back to someone else who ultimately is giving to me too, right? Like there's so many
Mm.
aha moments I experience with the sponsee from what they're sharing, that I can relate to or that jogs up things in me that are maybe parts of me that still aren't healed. And the healing that I experience one-on-one with another addict is just beautiful. There's nothing else like it.
You can't fabricate that feeling of what it is to actually do service and help somebody, and the joy that that brings to actually feel like you're making a difference in that moment is irreplaceable. you know
Mhm.
um I now have five sponsees, which is like that's my cap. Like I'm full
Yeah.
now, but it's amazing. Like I'm watching people grow, and and I'm watching some not grow, but like I'm still trying, and I'm going to be there for them whenever they need it. Uh, but there's some real keeners too that just are like really, it's really fun to have somebody who's like, as excited as I can be about the program. Like when I say that I have recovery fever, that means to me that it's like I'm excited about the program. I'm excited about how my life is changing. I'm excited about spending the rest of my life using these tools to grow. And I'm excited about helping that happen for you, you know?
You said it too, right? Like having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry the message to the alcoholic or addict who still suffers.
And for anybody that's new, that's the 12th step. Just
Thank
just
you.
just so you know. Like we
Thank
always
you.
tell, we just anything we're bringing in, we might as well just explain as it goes.
And I thought that too. I was like, I should start this off with saying that, but then of course the thought left when I went to speak. So thank you for adding that. Yeah. So having had that spiritual experience, right? Once we've had that and we've completed the steps, then we're able to start working with someone else, right? There's no timetable on that. And we don't elude, right? Like we don't prolong. It's like we got to go now, right? Because we can't keep what we don't give away. It tells us that, right? So as soon as I'm able to be of help to somebody else, right away. And that can be as simple as, you have 1 week and someone comes in who can't even string together 3 hours, right? Just going over even and saying hi to that person, welcoming them,
Mm.
like talking to them, right? Like that can make a huge difference. And it means something, right? That's how I was taught at least, right? Like, even if you have 5 days more than somebody, you have 5 days more than them, and they're nervous, and you've been in that position, so at least go and greet them.
I think we all have something we can learn from each other, even if it's an addict who's never been inside the program. Like maybe we're
Yeah.
going to learn a little bit more about tolerance. Maybe we're going to learn a little bit more about compassion by how we're able to treat somebody. Like every moment is an opportunity for growth, and it's our choice whether to make it or take it, or not.
Some of the most impactful things that I've heard are from people over the years who've had less time than me, right? Once I, was able to listen and reach out and ask for help and things like, and just listening to people share too in the rooms and outside of it, right? When I'm in social gatherings with people in the fellowship, like there's always some really cool tidbit or life lesson or like, I didn't think of it like that. Or, wow, I remember when I was there that just it all ties in together into this beautiful, living in the solution that we talk about, which is, living free of that hold our addiction has on us.
I uh, I heard this thing on Saturday. I'm going to mention it now. It completely off topic, but I just want to
Love
share
it.
it right now with you because it's just something I can't get out of my brain. It was talking about us feeling our emotions and like no longer kind of being separate from them. But and one lady gave a share on it. She was from Florida and she'd had like I don't know 16 years experience inside the program. That's irrelevant. But she said, now I use my emotions as directions. And that is like using her emotions as which direction her recovery needs to go. So if she's experiencing a lot of anger, then she needs to be working on love. And if she's, and just like using those emotions, good, bad, or ugly, as which way her recovery needs to be directed now. And I thought, I never thought of emotions as signposts like that. And it's just something that's been rolling in my head. But it's also like when you were talking about someone's share, where you have that aha, like I was having just a morning where I couldn't necessarily find myself with absolute tolerance of everybody on the meeting that I usually go. And I kind of left it and I recorded a song and I wanted to, but I was like, no, I didn't quite get enough recovery. So I jumped on this other meeting that I've never been to. And boom, it was like one of the things early on in there. And so, what do you think about that? Emotions as directions.
I love it. As soon as you said it, I was like, let me take this in and, think about the practicality of that. And it's so true, right? And it made me actually think about something that, I've had to learn the hard way, which is my feelings aren't, my inner feelings aren't necessarily my outward reality, right? And for so long, so many years, especially in addiction, if I felt some way, that must be how it is, right? And whatever my emotional state was, that's what predicted how I showed up in life. And today I am able to differentiate that. Okay. I acknowledge that I'm feeling a certain way, give myself permission to feel those things. But I also realize that that is not necessarily the reality, right?
Hmm.
Like if I feel hurt by something, doesn't mean that that person or that situation was intended to hurt me. And that's a big growth, right? So I'm going to remember that saying and I'm going to start to implement that in my day-to-day life too. So thanks for sharing that. I think that's really cool.
My first sponsor always said this. He said, "Your emotions are all real, but the facts they're based upon might not be." And I loved that because you know how we're self-deluded and like how our perception plays a filter on the facts, you know. So like it was one of my favorite phrases. He had some good phrases that I love, that's for sure.
One thing I remember learning from another fellow member is them telling me, you know, Shannon, you don't tell me how you feel, you tell me what I've done. And I want to know how you actually feel, right? And that tied into that fear of vulnerability, right? Like it's like if I felt hurt by something you did, Milan, instead of saying, you know what, Milan, I felt hurt based on this conversation we had, or you know, you shared this with me and that I felt that I felt hurt by that. But instead, I'm telling you, you did this, you did that, right? Like
Yeah,
nobody wants to converse with you then. They shut
yeah,
down, right?
exactly.
Feel attacked. And I lived like that the whole way. Like I want to over tell you and over explain
Yeah,
why what you did was wrong. But I can't just simply say, I feel angry. And then own that emotion and not make it somebody else's responsibility to change.
yeah, exactly. Mind blowing.
Just the slow learners, you know,
Yeah.
program, adulting.
So, being a sponsee and a sponsor yourself at this current moment, what have been your biggest challenges being sponsored and sponsoring others?
Ooh, okay, so I'll speak to my current situation, or my current sponsor and sponsoring reality because obviously I've done that in the past as well. When it comes to my sponsor, there really hasn't been any challenges. Like God definitely led her to me. You know what I mean? Like I heard her share in the rooms. She came up to me and was very welcoming and protective at the same way, right? It's a co-ed meeting. And I just loved how kind and genuine and like soft spoken she was, right? Which is the different than maybe the sponsors I've been gravitated to in the past, right? She was from Ontario too, like me. We had a lot of things in common in terms of like the feelings and emotions around it. But what she had that was different is she had a life that I I wanted. You know what I mean? Like she's married, she has a child, she has a beautiful relationships in her life. And, you know, I'm in a different stage in my life than I was in the past, right? So being able to learn from her and that aspect has been wonderful. So I haven't had any challenges. We really just align, right? She's exactly what I need. Um, at this stage of my life, and I'm really really grateful for her. You know, she doesn't tell me what to do. She has boundaries, and she's just been very encouraging and very kind to me, but also hold me accountable, right? All the things that I look for in a sponsor. So that relationship has been and continues to be quite beautiful. With sponsoring this time around, and I say that because it's a little different than in the past when I was working with sponsees. Before, I was under the I guess, the impression, not under the impression, I followed a lot of what I heard in the rooms, which was, you know, "You gotta sponsor more, and you have a lot to give, you have a strong message, you're a strong woman in this, you know, go, 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 go," right? And there was probably some ego in that as well, right? I had a lot of sponsees, I really lacked boundaries in that sense, and now for me, it's about quality over quantity, right? And also realizing what's not mine to take on, right? Like ultimately, my job is to take a sponsee through the steps and share my experience, strength, and hope with them. It's not to be a financial advisor. It's not to be a relationship counselor. You know, it's not to be a career counselor. And I really have no control at the end of the day of whether or not they stay sober, right?
I want to ask one thing then, and I want you to continue afterwards, but
Sure.
what do you do when they come to you with a relationship situation and, you know, they're maybe feeling desperate and and they're asking directly for your advice. How do you respond to that?
Sure. So I always start things off in my initial meetings with my sponsees explaining what the role of a sponsor is. Okay. I also tell them that I will let you know when I share something with you that is my opinion versus what is the program, because that can get kind of married away away sometimes in the room. So if someone I'm working with is asking me something about their relationship, really I hear them out. And ultimately I say, what do you believe God would want for you? Right. Suggest that they pray over it. I suggest that they do some inventory over those things. And unless it's something that's going to harm them, right, I'm not telling them what to do. Somebody came to me and shared something where their life was at risk or their recovery was at risk in that, right? I can make that suggestion, and I keep it like that. This is a suggestion. I don't say you need to do this.
Mhm.
Does
Okay,
that
and
answer your
yep,
question?
absolutely. And then is there more challenges inside being a sponsored or sponsees, or is
Well,
that
sure. I really believe that the women that are led to me are the ones that are mirrors of my own stuff, right? And if I feel myself getting an ego or, wanting to control something or change something, or I'm like, oh, why doesn't she just get it or whatnot, then I realize that's self-will, not God's will, right? And I recenter myself in that sense. So really it's just about I carry the message that I have, right? I'm genuine, I have boundaries in the sense of, okay, hey, you can reach out to me for this stuff. I'm available, but there's no rules around this. Right. And that's what's worked for me this time around. I have beautiful women that I get to work with. They teach me a lot, but they're also going to stumble and they're supposed to. Right. Like I'm not a safety net here to keep them from experiencing hardships and recovery. But what I am is a support when those things do happen.
nice? Well said. Do you have any questions you'd like to ask right now?
Yes, I do. So you said that you have 5 sponsees.
Mhm.
Are they all at different lengths of time in recovery? Or are they pretty new that you're working with?
Uh, None of them have any more time than I do.
Yeah,
To start out with, and they all obviously don't have the same birth date inside the program, but they're ranging from, let's see, one, two, three. They're probably ranging from like 0 to 6 months
that's
inside
fantastic.
there.
I told you in treatment, I've said it outside and I'll continue to say it. You have such a gift and such a beautiful message, and your zest for life and your gratitude for the life you have today, and also who you are in every aspect of life too, right? You have a lot of tools and a lot of strengths, and also like really strong guidance ability to give to somebody, right? And you do it in such a loving, caring way. So, yeah, you have a lot to offer. So, I think it's really beautiful that you're sponsoring. The second part to my question would be is what challenges have you experienced in terms of trying to balance everything too, right? You're working with 5 sponsees, you've got a full-time job, you've got a family, you have your own recovery. Have you found it overwhelming, or have like what things do you do to be able to balance everything?
Okay, so the only challenge, okay, my only challenge I've had in the sense of sponsors is not knowing initially that it's okay if it doesn't work out. You know, that was something I think that almost caused like a rejection in my mind of sponsorship temporarily, which, obviously ego getting in the way, but also, some sort of feeling of failure where like for anybody that's new and out there, you may see someone, they may give the most fantastic share ever, and when you sit down to do work with them, you and that person just are not compatible on a weekly or bi-weekly basis or whatever the schedule you're getting together, and that's okay. You might learn one quote that kept you straight one day from that sponsor, and that's enough. It's enough. Like it's not a formal marriage. You're not having to go to a lawyer to get divorced afterwards. And I just think that that's really important, like to be able to realize that you're going to have multiple people along your journey, and some people, I mean, I know some old timers who have the same sponsor and they've had them for like 40 years or something. And I'm not knocking that scenario either. But, it's kind of like marriages in that sense where, not how many marriages do you see work out? Yes, there are some that make it, and yes, there are some that don't. But, I think inevitably there just might become a part in your recovery where if you're actually striving and going forward and working at it, that you might just need somebody with a different skill set to keep you inspired. And that's all right too. Um, you know, Challenges for me as a sponsor, first of all, is am I doing it right? Like the just the self-confidence of not feeling like that their life is your responsibility. You know, it has been a real emotional struggle for me to not base a feeling of self-worth on someone else's success inside the program. That's been a difficult one for me because when somebody's faltering, what did I do wrong has been something that rings in my head. And, but I feel that that's evolved over the last 6 months for myself. And that doesn't quite happen in the same way. Um, Another thing for myself is, like I thought I was going to be a math teacher for the bulk of grade school because my mom was a teacher. I was really good at math, and I was like tutoring even in grade school to other people all the way to third year university. And one of the things that I always did was try to watch teaching styles. Like I watched the same person not be able to get anything across to the class and then have like a presentation on this other topic and everybody could understand a much more complicated thing. And so, being being cognizant of different people's learning styles and being sensitive to that and making sure that how I'm presenting it is how they need to receive it. It's like they call it personality profiling in business and also just in different education, and making sure that you're presenting the information in a way that someone else can absorb. Just because you're able to show it in the best way for your learning style means you've left three-quarters of the people out of your education. So I try to make it interesting. I try to keep it exciting. I try to share like speaker tapes. It's been something that has been a big part of my recovery for when I'm driving, but also just for taking things further in a philosophical level. Like you get some of the people who've done speakers for or been in the program for 30 to 50 years, and you get some of these recordings, and the things they're thinking about are like the philosophical root of, why we need recovery, and some of that just has me considering, the entire concepts of our existence. But to be able to turn and then talk to a sponsee about that and show them that that's part of the program too. Like it's not just about getting straight. It can be inspiring to some people if they're inquisitive in their mind and want more out of this, and I must say, there's been days where I'm like, oh God, how am I going to make it to this session? Um, and every single time it left me with a greater feeling of energy or spiritual buoyancy. I remember a quote we used to always say in options, right? What we have is a daily reprieve. Contingent,
On our spiritual condition.
that's right. And to discuss the program with someone else, to watch the program work in someone's life that you helped, is not like that's going to keep your emotional sobriety floating right at the surface. Like in order to talk about something, to teach it, you have to understand it so well that you can take it and verbalize it through your own dialogue, which means that you have to have a greater fundamental understanding than just when you're kind of coasting through it. Oh yeah, I know that step. No, you can't be like that because then they're going to ask you a question and it's going to show what you don't know,
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Just to touch on a couple things that you said, I love what you just shared, and it just sparked so much in me. Is you said just because somebody shares something in the rooms doesn't mean that that's going to align with you in a working relationship as a sponsor sponsee. And I say that to my sponsees all the time, like, don't fall in love with the shares, right? Watch how the person behaves outside of the room, right? Look in the parking
Mm.
lot, right? Are they living the principles they just spoke on, right? Because if I get up there and I can quote the book, right? I've been around in this thing for a long time. I know this book, right? But just because I can spit a chapter up there or speak on a step really well, if I'm then outside mistreating somebody or not holding the door for someone, or I don't help at all at the end of the meeting, right? Then what I'm saying doesn't align with my actions. And that's what we're looking for here, right? Like the rubber needs to hit the road on that stuff. Something that I've learned over the years, because I remember when I first started sponsoring, someone would come up to me at the end of the meeting and be like, "Oh my gosh, I really want to talk to you. Can I call you tomorrow? I'm looking for a sponsor." And I would be elated. I'm like, "Oh, these women are going to be reaching out to me tomorrow. I got all these sponsees coming in." And then I wouldn't hear from them, right? And ultimately over the years what I've realized, because there's been times where I've had to end a relationship with a sponsee, or maybe they've come, or not even, maybe they have come to me and they're going to choose to work with someone else. If I genuinely want nothing but the best for that person in their recovery, then I'm not personalizing this, because it has nothing to do with me, right? May not be the right fit, and that's okay, whether with me with them or them with me, right? I've learned something, they've hopefully learned something, and they'll be on to the next person, right? And that's all I want to do, is carry that message. I don't own that person, they don't own me, right? We're not in a binding contract here. It's as simple as one alcoholic helping another. And the other thing too is that I don't have any control over whether or not they drink or use again. I may play an instrumental part in them wanting to stay longer in recovery, because they've seen how the program has worked for me, right? And I'm able to relate to them in a way that maybe they see things differently, but we're not God. I wouldn't stay sober for my family, for any loved one out there when I was in active addiction. So why would I give the control to somebody else in their rooms, right? If I'm heading down a path of relapse, right? Maybe my sponsor can give me the tools and suggestions to say, "Hey, like, this is a really slippery slope where you're going." But ultimately, if I choose not to listen, and I choose not to make those changes, then I'm going to end up where I always have, right? Which is back in addiction, if I'm not willing to learn and be teachable and that thing. So I know, like, I've heard it in a speaker tape and in Joe and Charlie before, like, we can't screw them up any more than they come in this way, right? Which is true, right? Like, there's nothing that I'm going to say unless, I really am not 12 stepped and I haven't had that spiritual experience and I'm just going around throwing out my opinion, um, that's going to mess anybody up, because I'm just sharing on my own experience and I'm sharing on the literature that has a success rate, right? So I'm just carrying the message. Everything else is between my sponsee and their higher power and their willingness to do the work.
Yeah. My current sponsor, he said, when I asked him, he said, "Well, I'm not really taking on people right now," but he actually says, "Let's meet up for an hour and see if we're compatible." Because I think that he had said he had experiences where he said yes too quickly before. And, it really made me think about that with the people that I did accept to be a sponsor for, is that, you know, you're going to spend a considerable amount of time with this person.
And it's a very intimate relationship in terms of
Yeah.
vulnerability and trust. Like, you're sitting down with a stranger ultimately, right?
Yeah.
You
Hmm.
you form a really quick, deep bond with, right? And
Hmm.
that trust, that familiarity, and that comfortability has to be there on both ends.
Absolutely. And it also in conjunction of what I was saying as well is, like, if you meet up with this person and you don't have the ability to talk so that they can hear you at all, then you're kind of wasting your time. And also too, it's important to find out is the person really an addict or an alcoholic? You know, are they a normie in sheep's clothing? You know, and there is some people like that, or even, is it a mental illness that has just gotten masked by addiction? You know, because we're neither psychologists, moms, or wardens, you know?
Yeah, and the minute I start trying to control that is really the minute I'm ultimately out of control, because that's not what the program says. It doesn't say that I control and, strong arm anybody, right? It tells us in the literature there's no lectures to be endured here, right? Like this is a program of suggestion, which is crucial for us addicts and alcoholics, right? Like I
Yeah.
always say you can tell an addict anything, but you can't tell them much. You know what I mean? Because we don't want to be told. But when
Yeah.
it's suggested to me, then, I'm more open-minded about it. But you touched on something like your sponsor said, let's meet first and see if we're compatible. I do that always before I start working with somebody, right? Sit
Mm,
down, I explain to like I share on myself, I want to get to know them. I speak to what my recovery looks like on a day-to-day basis, what's
mhm,
expected, if we're going to have this relationship. And, I want to see that they're willing, right?
mm,
And that they're committed to doing the work. And I know real quickly too, right? Like they drop off after 1 to 2 meetings and steps. And you know what? They're not ready right now. But the thing too is that I'm not going to rob them of a potential future experience by then, chastising them or saying, "Oh, well, you're not doing the work or you're going
mm,
to end up relapsing." Like, who am I? I'm not here to play God, right? You're
mm.
not ready. You're not ready. When you are ready, we'll still be here.
So this is something I've come across recently, and I would like to hear about how you deal with this. But if I have an appointment with someone
Mhm.
and they were going to do a certain amount of step work, and they show up and they haven't done anything, you know, do you continue with that session or do you postpone it until they do their work?
So do you mean that you've asked them to do some work prior to meeting in your session?
They like work that was slated for us to go over before we could proceed to the next is not completed.
Yeah. So kind of go by, be a little bit understanding maybe on the first. Like one thing, for example, is I asked my sponsees to do the highlighting of what we're going to go over
Mhm,
prior to us meeting, right? That way we're focused, we're in the literature, I'm taking them through it. We're not
mhm,
stopping every 2 seconds to highlight and I
mhm,
can better explain that way. So say one time they show up early on and they haven't completed all of the highlighting, right? I let them know in future this needs to be done ahead and this is why, right? Like I
mhm,
reiterate what I explained before. And I ask them to get it done before the next session. Now, if this is going to become a pattern right there, I know they're not willing to do the work,
mhm,
right? If you can't do something as simple as show up prepared,
mhm,
then we're just spinning our tires here, right? That time could be better used for somebody who is prepared and
mhm.
does want to do the work.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I think that that's also a valid point. Is you know now that I'm kind of reaching finished a set of steps with my sponsor, and then we're doing the 12 by 12 book together now. But then after that, you know, he kind of sets you free. And I'm like, oh, don't throw me out of the nest, mama bird, you know. But at the same time, because I enjoy our philosophical talks so much, and but in his mind, he's like, okay, well, now you should be using this hour to go help someone else, and so will I. And now two more addicts are going to be saved, you know.
Love that. And I know what you mean. You're like, don't let me go, but they're really
Yeah.
not, right? What they're doing is the job of a sponsor, which is teaching you now how to go and sponsor. So when I take
Hmm.
someone through the book, I'm not just taking them through the steps for themselves. I'm teaching them how to take somebody else through those steps too, right? So that
Hmm.
upon completion of doing the step work with me, they're then going out and looking to be of service too, right? That should be something that's being prepared for, right, throughout the entire process. So when I'm done the 12 steps with them, I'm like, okay, now it's your turn to go and carry this message to someone else. And I'm going to be here, I will help you, guide you along that process too. But before I'm going into even the 12 and 12 or Drop the Rock or any other literature that maybe, we would spend time working through with our sponsors, I'm setting them up immediately to, you need to go carry that message. Once you start working with somebody, sure, we can do more work, but I also need that time to go help another alcoholic or addict that's, been placed in my path.
My very first sponsee to be finishing the steps is now actually looking to take on a sponsor. And I feel really proud, actually. I must say, I feel like super stoked. And to see it happen, to enable someone to feel that they have the power of carrying the message
There's nothing
from
cooler than
us.
getting a call from a sponsee that's like, I got this person I'm working with and I'm coming up against these challenges. And it's like, we have that laugh, right? Because I'll
Mm,
say, wow, doesn't that sound familiar? Right? Do you
yeah.
know somebody else who is like that? And then they laugh, right? Because a lot of which, I deal with maybe pushback or, not wanting to be in full surrender with my sponsees are things I went through too, in early recovery where, yeah, I'll give it over, right? But I still want to try to have a little bit of control over this area of my life, right? So, it's a cool experience because you're together carrying that message, right? And like your sponsor said, now there's more addicts being helped, right? Than just tunnel vision on one person because it says like we need to carry that message. So once you've done step 12, let's
Mm.
go.
I'm feeling like in the future for myself, somewhere between 2 to 4 will be an adequate number. Five was a bit overwhelming, but the last couple people who asked, I just loved them and I couldn't say no. And but I do realize that there is a limit to time and energy in life.
And I'm realistic too with my sponsees, right? Like, here's what I can allot time wise to working with you, right? Here's what I'm going to expect during those sessions so that we can
Mm,
stay on track. If they're like, hey, you know what, I need to go through these steps, quite quickly. I'm hanging on by a thread here, right? If I can't do it in a speed like ultimately if I'm giving you an hour to 2 hours out of a week, I think that's quite fair, right? But if
mhm.
somebody's like, "Hey, you know what? I need to hit this hard right now, like treatment fast," I might refer them to someone else, right? That I know maybe has that ability, or I suggest to them like, "Hey, you know what? I can be here as a strong, supportive woman in recovery that you can reach out to, but I'm not the sponsor for you at this time."
And there's a lot of fabulous retired old timers out there who have virtually dedicated their life to this service that I've seen and met myself. And those type of people do might need that, like almost what I would call a treatment level of application of the steps. Like most people, because we work so hard in treatment, when the level and speed that most people want to go at, to me, is like a snail's pace. I'm like, really? I'm like, you can handle going that slow through it? Like, I don't know if I could have stayed sober without the intensity that the treatment center provided for time and allotment for the steps. Like, I needed to change my life and I needed it to change fast enough that it was like shedding a skin like a snake, into a new uh, skin of recovery.
Well, you and I, when we were in treatment, like, we weren't there to, screw around, right? Like I'm not in rehab because I had nothing better to do with my time, right? Like I'm there because I need to save my life and I'm willing to do the work and I want to get through it. But it's a catch 22 in some ways, right? Like it's not an exam. We're not saying to people, you got 3 hours to complete this, right? Like I want them to do thorough step work, right? And that means really explaining and making sure that they grasp and understand the steps too.
Hmm.
Something that I hear sometimes is, oh, I just did my step 3 and I'm going to get started on my step 4. Like, that's the step that people want to push off, right? It says in the literature, having completed step 3, next we launched out on a course of vigorous action. It doesn't say we tiptoed, we evaded, right? It's we launched, means let's go, right? I need to get them into the solution and into those working steps, right? And
Hmm.
4 and 5 is crucial in that, right? Because we need to get into these defects. We got to clear the wreckage of our past so that we can be in a new future. So no time to waste on that. And I don't let my sponsees sit in their step fours either. I'm like, let's go. I'll break it up for them, section by section. But when three's done, they're starting their four.
When people say to me, "Well, I want to make sure I don't miss anything," I'm like, you know what? You're better off to get 80% because 80% is probably 99% of your problem. You know, my sponsor said to me the other week, and I believe it to be true. You know, your top three defects are 95% of your problem. You know, and it's so true. Like you don't need to prove that you're every single defect on the 51 defect list. Like that, like there's really nothing in that except for beating yourself up as hard as you can with a baseball bat. Like, but you know, to actually see the main three things that are causing the struggle in your life and to see your part in them and to be taking action on them and then to be making amends in that, you know, that's more important than being like, I took 4 months of my step four, you know, like,
That's the ego right there. You know what I mean? It's not a competition of who's the most defected, right? Like it's not the competition
I,
of,
I'm the worst.
oh, well, I was the worst in my addiction. I was this. No, it's
Yeah.
ultimately like an addict is an addict, period.
Yeah.
Right. And eh, there's no sense in sitting here and going, well, I need more time to sort this through because you said like 80% is better than nothing at all. And truthfully, we're only going to bring back into sufficient force and memory the pain and suffering of our addiction in so much degree, right? Within that first year. Things are going to come up later. That's why it's
Mhm.
not a one and done, right? Like I've
Yeah.
done multiple sets of steps throughout the years in my recovery. And I'm putting down in for what I can remember to the best of my ability, right? While being honest with myself, not like, oh, I'm just gonna skirt around on this one, right? Like we got to put it all down, but what we remember. But that doesn't mean that, in this year or the next year, I may not run into somebody or think of something and be like, oh, wow, that was a resentment I've completely forgot about. And now it's popped up. So I'm going to do a 10 on it, right? Or I'm going to reach out to my sponsor, maybe do a mini 4 on that, right? Like you're not going to remember everything the first time.
My memory is so impaired that I know I can't.
Well,
You
you
know,
live
like
a life in
I get
blackout and
things.
altered state, right? It's
Yeah,
not like we're going to suddenly have the clearest thinking known to man.
you know, and I think doing multiple rounds on the steps, I don't even think that you can look at some of your defects clearly until you clear some of your defects out of the way.
It's like I always
Like
say my
dishonesty,
defect.
like until you can get rid of dishonesty, you're seeing everything diluted because you're not being honest to yourself about what you're even interpreting.
Well, it's like Hungry Hungry Hippos, that game we played when we were a
Oh
kid.
yeah,
It's like one defect goes away, another pops up, right? And
yeah.
it's also based on different scenarios, right? Like I can be free of one defect and then suddenly a situation pops up and that safety net, I call it, because that's what we know, right? Is our defense mechanisms. Those defects can pop right up. But when you're asking God to remove that defect, you're also practicing the opposite of that, right? If I want impatience removed from me, then in every situation where my gut instinct is to react impatiently, now my mind tells me right away, this is an exercise for you to practice patience,
Mhm. I
willing to
remember
have them removed, right? And God removes that at his time too, not just on our own.
I remember you showing me that page you had of your defects with the arrow over to their opposite on it.
Yeah, the
And I
affect.
actually did the same thing after I saw how you did that and laminated that. Yeah, that was man, I sure have learned a lot from you over the time that I've known you.
I learned a lot from you, and there's nothing cooler than what we're doing right now and being support systems for each other through it.
Mm,
Like I can call you, we can bounce ideas off each other, we can share in our journeys and recovery, the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between, right? And there's no
mhm.
judgment here. And it's just, we have a beautiful friendship, and I'm so grateful for that.
I
I
am
learn a lot
immensely
from you.
grateful.
You
I,
have a lot of wisdom to share.
well, that's thank you. So I believe that we've done a great job going over our topic. This has been an interstellar episode in my heart. But I would like for you now, I know that I didn't ask you this beforehand, but I'd like you to tell people what you're doing now with your life and your business. I believe in supporting people's endeavors that of their freedom rising in their lives. So let us know what you're doing with your new business right now. And anybody in the Calgary area, go see Shannon because she's the best.
Oh, thank you so much, my friend. Appreciate the shout out. So today I am officially 1 month open with my skin studio that I opened here and Mission neighborhood in Calgary. So yeah, 4 weeks ago I opened my own skin studio. Really, I've been thinking about doing something like this for a while, but there was fear around it and the old familiar and comfortability and everything. But yeah, I absolutely love working with skin. I am a clinical esthetician by trade and I've worked in business for a long time. So being able to go out and open my own business and offer incredible skin services, really get to know my clients and help them on their journey to healthier, better, more resilient skin and really, uniquely customizing all my treatments to so I meet people where they're at, right, with their skin struggles. I myself struggle with acne over the years, so it really is like a passion project for me. And yeah, I love being able to do this. And yeah, I
What
feel like
services
it's
do
my
you
shit.
offer inside the skin
Sure.
treatments?
Yeah, I'm doing
Yeah.
medical grade facials, meaning that I am working with physician prescribed skincare lines. I also do chemical peels and microneedling. So I'm able to target anything from melasma to acne to scarring to anti aging. And then I sell some really cool skincare lines that I believe in and have worked with over the years. And I do skin consults for clients too. I also have an online store which has been going really well. And I have really cool, fun names for my facials too. So there's something for everybody, really.
Do you have a website name you'd like to say for people to be able to
Sure.
jump
It's
on there?
www.skyn, S-K-Y-N, by Shan, SHAN.com. So
And repeat that
www.
one more time for the slow spellers.
Sure. www.skynbyshan.com and skin is spelled S-K-Y-N.
Proof in the pudding that recovery can come true with all the promises for sure.
One cool thing that I committed to doing, and I've already started this with this business, is helping a lot of addicts whose skin has been significantly affected by their drug use. So I am working pro bono, right, with a couple clients right now whose skin has really gone through the ringer as a result of the drugs that they were using and being in addiction for so long. So yeah, I have customized treatments with them to help repair their skin and restore some confidence. So that was huge for me. A big thing was that I wanted to be able to give back, and I'm doing that. So I'm super grateful for those clients that trust me every day that come in the studio.
I'm really proud of you, Shannon. And I'm really grateful that you were here today. I'm hoping we make this a regular thing.
I'd
So
be honored
I
to.
hope to have you back. Maybe we'll think of a topic right when we close up here. If you've liked what you've seen here today, please subscribe and share this podcast and like it. We're looking for interaction with our audience. You can email recoveryfreedomrising@gmail.com or contact Milan South Okanagan Starsick on Facebook with questions, topic suggestions, or just comments. We'd love to hear from you. If you have anything that you'd like for Shannon and I to discuss in the future, also you can send me that suggestion and her and I might delve into it and come back with a nice episode for you.
If you're a female that's been listening to this podcast and, you're maybe unsure of whether or not you want to commit to recovery or not, or you're struggling, or maybe you're early in recovery, or really just anywhere throughout your journey, if you need some support or you were touched by anything that I said today, please reach out. Milan can share my contact info with you. And yeah, I'm happy to help in any way that I can.
Absolutely. And you'll see my contact info here at the end of the episode. I would love to be creating a show of the freedom rising in your lives. So if you would like to send any photos of you flourishing in your life as a result of your recovery, please send them in to me. And tune in next episode for more recovery fun. Bye bye, everybody.
Buddy, thanks so much, Milan, for
I
having me.
love you.
I love you too.
Any time of day.